Okay, now that we're recording, I'm going to welcome everyone again and welcome Joe McReynolds, who's going to be a group expert. And we'll start with the first slide all over again. Okay, so I've been reading Mark Carney's book, and he talked of recognizing that leadership is the acceptance of responsibility rather than the assumption of power. So that means that basically elected officials work for us. It's not the other way around. And I think as we go in and brief MPPs, we need to make that clear to them that we recognize that. We can do it politely, but I think we need to do it firmly and assertively. Okay, next slide, Harry, please. So the objectives of this session are to increase our understanding of the role and function of MPPs, because a lot of us don't know what that is. And I have to admit, when I started doing advocacy, I didn't know either. And also to form a plan for meeting with MPPs and doing issues briefings. Again, these are all things that you learn and you acquire the learning over a period of time. Every time you do a briefing, you will learn more about what you should have done. And that's good because you'll have that information for the next time. How to handle a meeting with an MPP. And I'm going to just tell you a very quick, funny story here. Many years ago, I met with Janet Ecker when she was the Minister of Community and Social Services. And I met with a group of parents of children with disabilities in Durham region. She was the MPP for Durham. And we were trying to tell her that she needed to add $3 million to the Special Services at Home program, which was a direct funding program. So we went in. She told me that we could have two representatives. We ended up having 20, and we crowded into her office because we don't follow the direction of what they tell us to do. Anyway, what we did is I presented her with that ask that we need $3 million to top up special services at home. Essentially, she slammed her fist on the table and she yelled at me, "Damn it, Trish, if I had the money, I'd give it to you." We anticipated that she was going to say she didn't have the money. At that time, they had a whole bunch of area offices that they didn't need because all those area offices were doing was saying no to people. Meanwhile, we were paying out over $4 million for salaries for people to say no to parents of children with disabilities. I told her that if she collapsed those area offices into these regional offices, she would have the $3 million. And she looked at me and she said, "Leave it with me." 5 days later, she rose in the legislature and announced $3 million for special services at home. So there's the importance of going in with a plan, anticipating what an MPP might say, and then telling them what they can do to address whatever it is that they might say. So that's a perfect example where we hit the sweet spot and she was already committed. She wanted to do it. She just didn't think she had the money. So we told her where she could get the money, and she got the money. She collapsed those area offices into regional offices, which made sense also from the ministry perspective. But the parents got their money that year, which was really, really good. So it's important to be able to anticipate what they might say. We're also going to go over tips in forming connections and following up with MPPs and identifying some of the common mistakes we've all made in dealing with them. And also how to handle follow-up after the meeting, because that's going to be critical as well. That's what maintains the ongoing connection that you're going to want to build with your MPP. Next slide. Okay, so here's an MPP's actual job. They have a lot of power. MPPs have a lot of power. And most people don't know just how much power MPPs actually have. And one of the things that I have not mentioned here, but I will mention now, is if you need information, you can get information from the legislative library through your MPP. And that's how we found out that 69% of people currently living in long-term care facilities have no significant disability. That's a significant piece of information. The legislative library could get it from the Ministry of Health, but we could not. So using your MPP to gain information, to get information for you, that's tremendously helpful as well. So they can enact, amend, or repeal laws and regulations. That's what they work on. And if they have particular concerns, they can bring that to their caucus, and those can be made priorities in meetings with caucus. They can participate in developing or amending government policies, their programs, their procedures, and they can do that in a couple of ways. If they're in opposition, they can challenge the government on some of their policies, programs, or procedures. If they're in government, they can, as part of the caucus, raise these kinds of issues with cabinet ministers present. So they can have some influence here. They go out, they often represent government or their party at local, national, and international meetings and conferences. So this is the other thing. Your MPP will have a lot of contacts that could be beneficial to you. So what you want to try to do is ask their advice. Do they have contacts? Do they have people who can assist you? Because if you ask their advice and you ask for their help, very often they will give you contacts. They're supposed to respond to matters of concern to constituents or to the general public, which is where a very clear ask comes in. When you go, you have to go in with a clear ask of what it is that you would like to have your MPP do. They can move motions or table public or private members' bills. And a lot of MPPs, if they've had a particular issue that they're concerned about, have tabled private members' bills. And whether they're in the opposition or whether they're in the party in power, those private members' bills do have an impact on the government in power. Oftentimes, even if the bill doesn't pass, they will do something to deal with what the issue is that the private members' bill raises. They can prepare, accept, or present petitions from constituents. So if constituents are very concerned about something in their area, they can launch a petition and then they can ask that their MPP present that in the Ontario legislature. And MPPs will often assist in how you do that. What they can do as well is they may serve as a parliamentary assistant to the minister responsible for something. So if you have a PC, MPP, they may not be a minister, but they may be a parliamentary assistant to a minister. So they may have more ability to influence things than you may have originally thought. So this is where it becomes important to check out what their background actually is and what their role is, especially if they're serving as part of the government. Next slide. Okay, so the first thing you have to do is find your MPP because not everybody knows who they are. So you can go to that site, and you're going to be getting these slides afterwards. So you can go to that site, and it will give you who the name of your MPP is. And when you click on it, it'll give you their address, phone number, and email address. So that's critical, so that you can email them and ask for the meeting. And in a minute, we're going to outline, some of the things that you need to say. But what you always want to do is you always want to request the meeting in writing, always, so that you're building a paper trail. It's a mistake people often make. They'll call the constituency office and they'll say, "Can I have a meeting?" And then there's no record that they ever requested the meeting. So sometimes that gets used against them later on. So you always want to have proof that you've actually requested the meeting. You always want to mention that you are a constituent of theirs, and you want to include the names of anyone you're bringing with you. And I will encourage you here to bring some people with you. If you have local community leaders, whether they're a member, Melanie knows this, she's the president of the Canadian Federation of University Women. And, you want to bring some of those members with you and introduce them that way. Gay is here from the CARP chapter in Windsor. You want to mention, I'm with the CARP chapter and these people are all on the executive, if that's who you're bringing. You want to let them know that you're bringing people with you who have influence in the community because that will always put your issues higher on their agenda. Now, what people often do is they'll say, um, can I have a meeting and can you let me know by this time when I can have the meeting? What you want to do is you want to request the times when the MPP will be available. You want to find out from the constituency be available and tell the constituency assistant anytime when you would not be available, what in that week that you're requesting the meeting. So you're trying to find out when are they going to be there, and try to book your meeting at a time that they're going to be there. Many of the MPPs are going to be in their constituency offices on Fridays. That's usually constituency day for people. So just so that you're aware of that. You want to, in the letter, outline the issues that you want to discuss. In other words, you don't want to surprise them. I know that a lot of people think, well, we're going to surprise them because, then they're not going to be on the back foot. That's not going to be productive. They appreciate very much not being surprised and being told ahead of time what issues you're going to discuss so that they can come somewhat prepared for the meeting. You also want to follow up with a call to the constituency office if you don't get a response. Many times you won't get a response from email. You should actually call up the constituency office after and say, I sent this email. I've requested a meeting. I would appreciate a response. Now, you can be polite to the constituency assistant, but do mention this is, you remember when your mother used to say to you, don't make me come over there. Remember that. Okay. And most of the time, we didn't want to make her come over there. Well, that's what you're going to be doing with the constituency assistant. It's like, if you can't give me a meeting date, that's fine. I'll just come in person and I'll talk to you then. Well, as soon as you say that, they will do anything to keep you from coming to the office. So that's really a good way of getting your meeting. Okay, next slide. Okay, so how do you prepare for a meeting? Basically, you want to know as much as you possibly can about this MPP before you ever set foot in the person's office. So, for example, if you know, like in our case, we have an MPP, a young man who has an MBA. So I'm going to come in with a business case when I go and interview him, when I go to do my briefing with him. I'm going to give him the business case about the fact that providing integrated community support services is a whole lot cheaper than what the government's doing now. And with your experience, you can challenge them on that and tell you what's their business case. How do they justify doing what they're doing? So he will appreciate that because that's his background. He can use his background to further this issue on our behalf in the legislature by asking a question, maybe. So you want to say, I'm very pleased to know that you have a background in this. That way they know you did your research too. So you know them, you know what their background is, and you can basically put your pitch, basically pitch what you're saying to their experience. What's your objective? A lot of people want to go in and say, look, I'm really upset about this and this and this and this. Well, that's great. But you've got to have an objective. Like, what do you want to come away from with this meeting? What's your specific ask to them? I can't tell you how many times I've seen it myself where people have written long letters and emails and then I get to the end of it and I don't know what to do. So we have to be very clear about what our ask is with MPPs. 3 messages. You want to focus on 3 specific messages. You don't have to cram everything into one meeting. You can, in a few months, have another meeting. So you want your 3 specific, your top messages to your MPP. 1-page briefing note. We had a rule when I was trained as a community organizer. You never do a briefing note longer than what a bureaucrat can read on the toilet in the morning. The truth. That's the truth. A lot of them read their briefing notes on the toilet in the morning. So You don't want a really long briefing note. They'll never get to the end of it. So if you can do a one-page briefing note to which you can refer while you're speaking to the MPP and then leave them with it at the end of the meeting, that makes you look very organized and professional and part of impression management, which we'll talk about in a minute. Okay, SSAO's website has all the research and policy papers and editorials you could ever need to do a briefing on any issue that you're concerned about related to aging in place. So I'd encourage you, you just use any of the materials on that site. They're there for you to use, so you go ahead and use them. Ensure that anybody that you bring with you in advance, and boy, I've gotten burned on this one. Steve, you must know that, right? I've gotten burned on this one, where somebody was not as well briefed ahead of time, who didn't do their homework, and then who took the meeting totally off course when we were in the meeting. So be careful. Make sure that anybody you take with you is actually as focused as you are and has done the same homework and has access to the same information. Now, I have run into MPPs who've tried to take over the meeting. That's when you use your body language. You lean forward and you say, "You're busy, so am I. So I would just like to cover the materials that I came to cover today, if that's all right with you." And invariably at that point, they'll back off and they'll let you say what it is that you want to say. That's called a process call, okay? When MPPs behave badly, do a polite process call. Let them know that they're dominating too much and that you would like to be able to say what you would like to say. Okay, tell them that you'd like to circle back to hear what progress has been made after the meeting and ask them when would be a convenient time to do that. In other words, you're not taking no. You're not asking them whether you can. You're telling them you will. So when can you circle back to find out what action they've taken and what you've asked them to do? Okay, next slide, Harry. So in the meeting, be on time. It's interesting that I have to say this, but I can tell you that's happened where people showed up late. Right away, the impression is these people are not organized. So you want to be on time. You want to be polite and be respectful. There are people who think that they have to come in and be pushy right away. That's not good impression management either. You want to share a personal reason why you're coming. The reason why I'm coming today is that this issue has touched me personally, and this is how it has, or this is how it will. Um, Tie any of their experience as well, anything you know about them, tie it to what your issue is as well and what you're going to be talking about. So if somebody has supported their own parents, say, you know, as well as I do, how difficult it can be, especially if you don't have enough support. So right away, you're establishing a rapport. You and I both understand this situation. Be brief and to the point. What happens is sometimes people will be nervous in these meetings, and so they'll talk. They'll just start talking. What you want to do is have your talking points there, and you want to be brief and focused and right to the point. Okay. Use local examples if you can. One of the things that I talked with our new MPP about was the fellow down the street who sat out on his porch. He has dementia, sat out on his porch every day yelling. There was no reason for that. And I talked about that and I said, what could have been happening instead for him if we had integrated care in our area? So he got that. This was a constituent who has dementia, who isn't getting the support that he needs. And I use that as an example. Now, you'll have 20 minutes. Okay. So everything you've got to say, you got to be able to say it in 20 minutes. And also try and find out what the MPP's response is in that time as well. So basically, you're quickly briefing the person. You're going to leave them with a lot of information. So you don't have to worry if you hit every point exactly right. You're going to leave them with that information. So you cover your key points, give the MPP a little time to respond so you get a reading of where they're at and what follow-up you might need to do later on. A lot of people worry, and they've said it to me. Well, I don't think I can do this because I mean, I'm not as well versed as you are. Well, the way I got well versed is I jumped in with both feet, sometimes not in the best possible way, but I learned. And so you have to actually jump in and you have to learn. And as you learn, you'll get much, much better at this. So there's no problem with saying, look, I'm not certain of the answer to that question, but I will get back to you about it. And be explicit in your ask, as I mentioned before. If your MPP is unable to give you a response, ask when you can expect to hear back from them. And then follow up. Make sure you follow up. Okay, next slide. All right, after the meeting, you want to leave your handouts and any information with your MPP for reference. Do not leave them a stack this big. Leave them a couple of key documents that will be helpful for them. Know this as well. And this is really interesting. It's something that I actually learned through the process of doing this. When you have an MPP who appears to be extremely combative, don't assume off the top that they're against you. They may be being combative because they're trying to get the answers to difficult questions that they know that they're going to face when they try to present this to their caucus. So in other words, they know what their caucus is likely going to say. And they may be challenging you to get the answers so that they'll have the answers when they go into that caucus meeting. So don't assume that if they're being combative, that they're being combative to be rude or because they want to get rid of you. Assume that they're being combative because they want to know more. And I think if you don't react and you assume that that's why they're doing it and you treat them with respect, you will gain in their eyes at that point as well, but you'll also be very effective. Plan to follow up on any commitments that the elected official has made by a certain date. So in other words, you're always trying to find out, when should I be following up on this? When will you be able to tell me something more? Irrespective of the outcome, even if you weren't happy with it, be classy. Send them a follow-up brief sometimes with a thank you in an email. Call the constituency assistant and tell them that you appreciated them setting up the meeting. Be polite, because the next time that you go to set up a meeting, you will probably get one. There are so many people who are rude, who are obnoxious, who are threatening, who go on at great length that they have to deal with. They will appreciate having somebody who's polite, who's concise, who's focused, and who treats them with respect. Okay, so you want to be that person. On your way out, you want to stop and be sure to thank the constituency assistant. Okay, and at Christmas time, remember them. Doesn't matter. Doesn't have to be a big deal. Can be a couple of nice bars of soap wrapped up nicely, but do it. Because you know what? We haven't got thousands of dollars to donate to MPPs, but what we can do is we can treat their executive assistants nicely. And that will get you much further sometimes than even a huge donation. Okay, so you always want to try to make friends with the constituency assistant because they have a lot of influence. They're the ones dealing with constituents on an ongoing basis. They're the ones who are briefing the MPP about constituency issues. If you have a good relationship with them, your issues will get through to the MPP on a regular basis. Okay, next slide here. Here are the common mistakes. And I think I've made a few of these actually. Wanting to go on at length telling your story. And I can tell you, having worked with a lot of people, parents especially, of children with developmental disabilities, they want to tell their story. Of course they do. They're living it every day. It's a big deal for them. But you know what? They want you to do that. They want you to go on at length, using the whole 20 minutes telling your story, not coming in with a hard ask, not demanding accountability, just telling your story. And they will be very empathic and all kinds of things, but you won't get anywhere. That's the problem. So, one of the things when I was working with parents of children with developmental disabilities, I said, you have to be tougher. You got to bite the bullet, go in with your direct ask, and make them be accountable for it. And that worked far better for them because up until then, they had been telling their story. And they will get empathy. They will. I mean, who couldn't, given the situations they were having to deal with? But it wasn't effective. Being too intense. I've met anti-poverty activists who were way too intense, and who could blame them? They were seeing people dying in the streets. They were seeing people unhoused and suffering horribly. Who can blame them for being intense? But when you're dealing with your MPP, you cannot afford to be that intense. You have to make your case, make it solidly, but you can't be pushy about it because that will just get the MPPs back up. So it's an important lesson to learn, and it's something that I did early on too. I was too intense when I went in and briefed politicians because I cared about people in nursing homes who I was representing. Being rude, it's tempting. I'm not going to say it's not tempting because some MPPs are so dense or they're so rude themselves that you want to be rude right back. That's when you do a process call. That's when you say, is there some reason, like, am I offending you in some way? Because you seem to be being quite rude right now. That will put them right back on their heels. They won't expect that. And quite often they'll just say, well, no, 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 it's just that. And I'll say, okay, well, I will try then to be da da. And they will be taken aback at that. You will have disarmed them at that point. Failing to ask questions to get a read on where the MPP stands on your issues. At the end of the meeting, if you do nothing else, say, how do you feel about what I've been telling you? Just ask that simple question. How do you feel about what I have been telling you? Because at that point, you're going to get a read on where they're at, okay, after the briefing. Failing to obtain the MPP's advice. You are very well connected. You know a lot of people. You're very good at what you do. Is there some way you can help me find contacts who can assist me with this? You'll be amazed at the contacts they give you. Okay. And that opens the door because then when you contact those people, you can say you were referred by the MPP. Okay. Constantly bothering the constituency assistant. I'm sure Mary had lots of experiences with this. People who call all the time about every single thing. That's not going to get you anywhere. What it will get you is it will get you being put off on a regular basis because it's going to feel like you're wasting the person's time. You want to go in on the key issues and you want to follow up carefully on those, but you can't be constantly calling the office. If you do that, they're just going to turn you off. Not following through. Lots of people, they just say, oh, well, that was a useless meeting, and they don't follow through. Well, don't accept it as just a useless meeting, just keep following through. Every now and again, call them up and say, by the way, have you made any progress on this? Because this is still happening. And not being sufficiently assertive in demanding the meeting in the first place, politely, but insisting that you have to meet with the person. If not now, when is what you're asking. Okay, next, Carrie. So the most successful meetings is you're giving the impression that you're professional in your approach. You form a connection. It doesn't have to be a very strong connection the first time, but you want to form some connection with your MPP. You want to have focused on impression management so that the impression you're leaving them with is that you mean business, that you're smart and you mean business. You know what? Probably 90% of the public who they deal with do not come across as smart or that they mean business or that they're focused. If you do, that's going to leave an impression on them. You want to end with mutual respect. I appreciate you having given me this time today. I hope the information that I've given you has been useful. Let's see what the response to that is. and you want it to lead to another meeting in the future. Okay, and again, doesn't have to be immediately. It could be in a couple of months where you're coming in to see them again. Okay, Harry, next slide. Okay, here's where it gets interesting. Because for some people, in spite of everything that they have tried to do, um, their MPP has been absolutely useless or has not responded to them or has been rude. There's a whole variety of negative responses that people have sometimes gotten. All right, here's what gets action. And I'm going to tell you a story again from quite a number of years ago. Murray Elston was the Minister of Health. He also represented a riding up in Grey Bruce. I had tried over and over again to get in to see Murray Elston and was getting nowhere. And I was at the time the president of Concerned Friends of Ontario Citizens and Care Facilities, deeply concerned about nursing homes, which was his jurisdiction. Okay, they weren't responding. So we decided that we would take a carload of people up to Grey Bruce to his riding, and we would deliver 300 flyers in his riding, right around his constituency office. Because we knew that the people who supported him in that riding would make a call to his office once they got the flyer. And sure enough, what happened was then we went down to the constituency office. We walked in front of the office with signs saying, please help us get our health minister homes. And next thing we knew, the constituency office person came out and said, what is it you want from us? I said, we want a meeting with the Minister of Health in Toronto at his Toronto office. And she said, give me a minute. Went in, came back out and had a meeting date for us. So that works. They don't like it. When you go into their constituency and you start informing their constituents of what they're doing. Direct action, picketing the constituency office. I know constituency office assistants hate this, and especially you don't want it to be violent or threatening. You just want it as an information picket in front of their office. This is why we're upset with this person. So that works. We picketed Janet Ecker's constituency office when she wouldn't give families of children with disabilities a meeting. So the meeting I told you about, that's how we got that meeting. We picketed her office. Big signs saying honk if you support children with disabilities. The whole place was just a constant wave of honking. And the constituency office person came out and said, what do you want? So that's how we got the meeting. Hold a public meeting and invite the opposition. If they won't answer you, hold a public meeting right in their riding, organize it at the library, invite the public, say we're inviting these members of the opposition to talk about this, which is important to us as constituents, and do something really funny. Put a Bobo doll in their chair where they should be. The press will cover it, and it'll give you some really good local press, which they will not appreciate. But the notice that you're holding a public meeting without them, they will get that pretty fast. And they won't cross you again if they know that you're willing to do things like that. Organize a telephone tree to call the MPP's office so that they're getting constant calls from people in their constituency saying, why are you not meeting with this group? And that has an impact. Protest needs to be lawful. You're seeing pictures down here of Rod Phillips' office, which Rod represented our riding, which said, resign now, where somebody stuck stuff up. Now, that would probably count as public mischief, probably not considered to be any kind of violent action. But believe me, that got a response. The office next to it, which is MPP, I can't remember what her name was, but that is what you don't do. You don't trash somebody's office. You don't threaten the people in the constituency office. I know none of us would do that, but some people have. And you don't ever do that. because that will totally work against you. Here, Doug Downey. Doug Downey was the Attorney General of Ontario, and there was a green protest outside of his office. No problem with that at all. They were completely lawful. Most of the time, if you're picketing, as long as you keep moving and you don't obstruct the sidewalk, the police won't give you a hard time either. So that's what you can do if you want to, really make the case that they better give you a meeting because there's no need for this. But since you put us in this position, I guess this is what we now need to do. Not everybody is comfortable with taking it to this level. Okay, last slide, Harry. So I know that there's all kinds of things in chat, which I haven't had a chance to look at yet. Did John Fraser have anything to say? Said Mary Lou Kelly. John did not in the briefing meeting with us. Um, in the past, I have spoken to John, and he's been reasonably good, but he's also sometimes seemed a little hostile to aging in place issues. So I'm honestly not sure how to read him on that. David's heading to a town hall. Government just wants to send us to for-profit jails. I agree with you, Kate. Right now, that's true. Sometimes actions and demonstrations do work, but the press has seen them so often now that sometimes they just don't work. And some people have said, how about, we organize a demonstration on the lawn at Queen's Park? My answer is always the same. Can we get 6,000 people? Because that's what it takes to fill the lawn. Can we get a flatbed truck with a full sound system? Can we get marshals? Can we get Johnny on the spots delivered? If we haven't got the funds to do that, don't hold that kind of a demonstration because that's what it takes. Um, will these slides be available? Yes, they will. Okay, so I've answered all of those. Do other people have questions or comments you want to make now? Joe, do you have
Yes,
any comments?
I'm sorry, Mike. When you shut up the sound, the speaker didn't my speak. But let me say a few things. First of all, Trish, you did an excellent job. I mean, it's not much I would want to say in addition to what you've said. I guess grew up in a political family. My dad was always on the in then many years, as I said, I worked inside the bureaucracy. In 7 of those years, I had the pleasure of briefing the MPs, the ministers in the House, and that was with the Conservatives, with the NDP, and with the Liberals. So I saw all three parties in their action. So a couple of things, just a couple of things, because I know there are questions and comments that want to be made. First of all, the most important thing for me has always been that most individuals who go into politics are there because they want to help their community. So they really do go in with a motivation because they want to be part of it. And the second thing I would say is most of them love to be liked. So, that is very important to remember when you're trying to engage and when you're trying to influence, etc. Don't hesitate to give them a compliment or something that makes them feel a little better, even though you may hate what they're doing or hate what they're saying, etc. The other thing I would comment on is when it comes to ministers, they're a little bit different than the MPPs. And you will have ministers, and I'm unfortunate enough to have the Minister of Health in my riding here. So I see that. But their constituency people are even more important when it's the minister, because the minister rarely gets the time to do the investigation locally and to really understand who. So love those constituency people and never say anything but positive things with them. Build a relationship with them. It's more important sometimes than building the relationship with the MPPs. So you've said all those things. The only other thing I had to comment on was the difficult question issue. George Smitterman was an expert with trying to put people off by pushing them because he really did want to know
Yeah.
how he could present an argument. And he would very easily like he was against you all the way for the first 10 to 20 minutes of any meeting with them. And You had to appreciate that, or else you were really flustered. And the final thing I'll say is yesterday I blew it with a meeting with a senior person. I did all the things that Trish said. We had the preparation, I had the briefing notes, I had even shared it an hour or two ahead so they knew not too much time to get ready, but at the same time, get ready. I took a couple people with me. We got our points across, and the next thing I knew, they went off in left field on
Yeah,
all kinds of stories about it. And we were lucky to get out of there with them remembering what we were asking about. So you
exactly.
got to really be careful when you're in the room with people that you keep on the simple message and keep everybody in the room with you on that message. And anyway, that's all I need to say. Let's hear
Well,
from everybody else.
that's great, Joe. And I had the pleasure of briefing Smitherman as well, and had the same experience, I can tell you. Um, but I mean, he did do some things because of it, and so that was good. But yes, when they start going sideways, or if they start going sideways, jump in, say, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, and you do a process call. Say, I think we're getting a little off track. Can we get back to the issues at hand? Sometimes you have to do that because it's a strategy to take things off track. So that's what we mean by a process call. Okay, you just say, I think we're getting a little off track here. If you don't mind, I'm sorry to interrupt, but can we get back to what we've been talking about?
Yeah.
And they're not ready for that. Most people don't do it. But it's a very good strategy and it shocks them a little bit. But boy, you sure get their attention if you can.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah. Okay. Or comments. Denise, you're muted. Yeah, Denise Lynch, I think you're
There
muted.
we go. Okay. Um, this, I was in sales for many, many years, and this really is a sales call. It's all the preparation you talked about. It's the examination of what are they facing in their writing, what's important to their constituents. Because really what you're doing is, yes, we as caregivers, we as seniors, we got major problems, but you can't go in on an emotional level. And
Yeah.
that's why your tip about the preparation is so important.
Yeah.
Not only think about, what's keeping them up at night in terms of the problems they have within their region, but think about the problems and the challenges they're facing with their leadership. And if you know something about them, and usually if they're giving you a hard time, it's because they know those are the objections that they're going to hear from either, their colleagues or their
Yeah.
own minister. And so everything that you said, think of it as a sales call.
Yeah.
Go in, what do I need to do? What are the questions? What questions might they have? And start off by, I know we've got 20 minutes and I'm grateful for the time. And then get bang into it. Those are just a few comments. And I'm going, wow, this is a sales call. I'm back in business.
That's right. No, that's absolutely right. And I mean, there's a lot of different fields that can be helpful as background to that, and sales is one of them for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And the whole thing around impression management is something that psychologists teach. It's
Okay.
like, usually people will form an impression of you in the first 40 seconds.
That's
So
right.
you've got 40 seconds to create an impression.
And I
Uh,
always remember the expression, you never get a second impression.
sorry,
You never get a
that's right. You
second
don't get
chance
it.
to make a first impression.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
So that's why you want to walk in, you want to walk in with your shoulders back. You want to hold your hand out and smile and say, we're pleased to meet you, right away. Right off the top, this person has confidence. This person, has no problem making contact. This person is not intimidated by authority. You know, all of those things are things you're conveying as soon as you step forward. And by the way, you're dressed properly. I have seen people go in to brief MPPs dressed in torn jeans and sweatshirts.
Oh,
I mean, that is absolutely not how you go in and talk to an MPP.
you got to think of it as a
Because
business meeting.
it's a business meeting. You go in and you have probably a jacket at least. So you're dressed business attire to go in because you're going to be doing business. And if you step forward, shake hands with them, smile, right away, you're giving the impression this person is confident. This person knows what they want to talk about, they're focused, they're confident, and they're friendly. And the message is we're friendly for now. And if we get the right answer, one of the things Harry will laugh about this, but he knows that this has happened so many times. Whether I've been dealing with senior bureaucrats or elected officials, I've always leaned forward and said, listen, we can do this the easy way or we can do it the hard way. And invariably, I mean, sometimes we've had to do it the hard way because, successive bureaucrats have had to learn that, this is not the way you treat people. So we've had to sometimes teach them that. But the truth is that elected officials come and go. The bureaucracy is forever. So briefing them and being respectful with them is something that we have worked on over the years, and it's paid off because they're hearing us, they respect us, and they're listening to us. And they're listening to us for all kinds of reasons. They've read those op-ed pieces in the newspapers. They get the press clippings. They know, okay, this is not an organization we want to screw around with. They know that. So all of those things are important. People have to sort of get that impression. SSAO has done the background on that. The op-ed pieces are there. The press have covered us and have quoted us. Our policy papers are on the web page and have also been sent out to 1,600 plus people in the province. So they have this information. They know a lot of people. Helen is here, a lot of other people are here who have a high profile in the community and who have a lot of respect. Mary, I can't see everybody, but a lot of people have a high profile in their community and they're respected and they know that they're SSAO members. So when you do go in, feel free to say, I'm here as a local member of Seniors for Social Action Ontario. Don't be afraid to say it. Don't be afraid to use our material. That should help you. Okay. Gays here from CARP, same thing. CARP has respect in the community. And, a lot of other organizations, if you're a Rotarian, tell them, if you're in a service organization of some sort, if you're a researcher, whatever it is, let them know. Tell them who you represent and what you know. Okay, other questions?
Just one more, Trish.
Oh, sorry, Denise, yeah.
Yeah, and that would be, would you recommend calling a lot of these organizations like Rotary, Lions Club, and saying you're a member of SSAO and you'd like to come and talk to them and
That's right.
give a 20-minute pitch
Yeah.
to answer their questions, because that's a way of reaching those members, and they either have parents and or they are seniors.
Yes, and we've already done a lot of presentations, so we have PowerPoint slides you can use as well.
Yay. Yeah.
So we're happy to turn them over. If you want to give a talk, we'll turn over our slides to you.
Oh,
And talk with you ahead of time if you like. And it's interesting. A couple of members usually call me every day about whether they're meeting with a researcher or they're going to do a talk or whatever. And I just sort of help them know what might get them the most mileage in what they're trying to do.
thank you.
Isabel? Yeah, Isabel? Oh, you're muted, Isabel.
Was coughing earlier. I wanted to thank you for this great presentation and to say, in my own circumstance, if I were going into an MP or MLA's office, I'm 90, I have a walker, and I wonder how they would respond and I'm receiving home care, how they would respond. Would that be a positive thing for me to do? Or
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know what? The best presentation we can make is to be our authentic selves. You know, it's like, I mean, you have to go in, you have to be who you are and say what you think. and that's what they're there for. They are there to serve you. You're a member of the public. You're one of their constituents. And
You're a voter.
and you're a voter. Exactly. So, you have every right to go in as exactly who you are, saying exactly what it is that you want to say. And all of these tips are just things that help prepare you because a lot of people handle things differently. You just have to sort of observe even on a Friday in front of an MPP's office who's going in and how they're handling things. And you know right away that a lot of the things you've learned today are not things people are doing. So you will stand out as somebody who's handling things differently and you're handling things more professionally and in a more focused way. But the important message is always going to be, I mean business. I'm not here to just waste my time or yours. I mean business. That's why I'm here. And you can do it politely, but you need to be assertive. You need to let them know I'm not taking no for an answer because I will be back. And next time I might be back with a bunch more people. So if I were you, I'd do it the easy way, not the hard way. And I mean, that's MPPs will respond to that. They will. They don't like to be threatened. They don't like to be bullied. Who does? They don't like people being rude to them or being pushy with them. But if you're polite and you're assertive and you're reasonable, they're not going to have a problem with that. Barbara?
Do you have any particular advice? My situation is that I have a new MPP, a new Liberal MPP. Um, so she's new, not just newly elected, but she's a new MPP. I'm in Toronto St. Paul, so
Okay. Yep.
it's my yeah. So anything specific for that situation?
You know what? In that situation, see, we have a newly elected Liberal MPP also. The very first thing you do is you offer your hand and you congratulate them and say,
Right.
I know that you went against the tide, which is some accomplishment. So congratulations. That's how I would start. You
She
give,
pushed out an NDP in my riding.
okay, I know, but nevertheless, he won.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
He won, and you congratulate him and you say, look, I
Sure.
know that's quite an accomplishment to
Right.
have
Yeah.
to have done that. And so I appreciate, that you've run a very good campaign. Then you say, what I'd like to do is I'd like to talk with you about something, like immediately get down to business. Say, I know we only have a few moments, so I just would like to make this as focused as possible. Do the process, tell the person ahead of time what the process is going to be. So I'd like it to be as focused as possible because I respect your time. And, we're both giving our time to this. So then you just start. And you have your talking points in front of you. And then at the end, you just push that right across the table and say, I'm going to leave this with you um, because I would like to circle back. So when would be a good time for me to do that?
But what is my ask to an
Well,
opposition member?
that's where whatever is the most important thing to you. Like I sent
Okay.
out, I think, did you receive the document, the briefing document that we sent out for
Yes, it's
SPF?
just
Take a look at that.
right. Yeah.
Decide what the most important points are for you, and then just do your one pager.
Yeah.
Whatever's the most important to you. See, there's no point sort of going in and trying to just advance SSAO's position
Hmm.
unless it's meaningful for you.
Yeah.
It has to be like if you have an elderly parent, you're concerned you're not going to be
No,
able to.
I'm the elder.
No, no, but if you're in a situation like it really depends, that's
Right.
just an
Yeah.
example. If you have an older parent who needs help now and isn't getting enough, that's your issue. And you want to say what would be helpful in that situation.
Right. Right.
And the ask will be, will you contact the responsible ministry to see whether you can get this?
Right.
That's
Okay. Thank
basically
you.
what you're trying to do. I mean, you want to get action on whatever it is that you need to get action on.
Yeah.
And on the policy front, it's I want, the ask is going to be we need integrated care in this area. Integrated care is essentially people not having to jump through 65 hoops to try to get whatever it is they need,
Yeah. Yeah.
but to have various services put together in a bundle where older people live. So you don't have 23 PSWs running around a building, you have three. And they take care of everybody in that building, and everybody knows them and they know everybody. That's integrated care. That's an example of what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And if somebody needs to be reassessed, maybe they've suffered a fall, they need physiotherapy now, that should be available through the organization providing the integrated care. They shouldn't have to jump through another hoop to try to now get physiotherapy. So that's what we're talking about. We're saying, look, it's wraparound care that we're
Yeah.
at.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, Isabel,
Thank you.
Yeah,
welcome. Sorry, Isabel,
I'm
you've frozen
sort
up.
of
I'm not sure.
asking too much, but okay. NORCs. I'm part of the UHN NORC committees, and are we like how macro or how micro do you?
Is Isabel freezing up for anybody else?
Yep.
Oh, okay. Isabel, I don't know why, but you're freezing up.
Oh, sorry. Can I try it again?
Yep.
Okay. I'm part of the UHN NORC committee, and I'm wondering if the level of discussion with your local MP should be, I want better care for my mother, or should it be, I would like to see NORCs investigated and implemented in my area.
Yeah, one's a policy issue, a general policy issue. The other one's a personal issue.
Yeah.
So, basically, the policy issue will deal with the personal issue in this case, probably. Um, I think during the federal election, Isabel, your best bet is to talk to your candidates about what their position is on NORC SSPs. And by that, I mean naturally occurring retirement communities with support services. So in other words, essentially you're bundling the services to provide to the people who live in the NORC. You want to hear from the MPPs. Have they heard about NORCs, first of all? And or the MPs, have they heard about NORCs, first of all? And second of all, what are they prepared to do within their focus of responsibilities to try to advocate that NORCs be funded? For service coordinators, we're looking for service coordinators and potentially community developers as well. So think about it. Funding a service coordinator and a community developer for a NORC, those are two people who could very quickly, A, build community resources for people in the NORC, but also coordinate services to come into the NORC. So if you're getting 5 different hospital admissions in a month because people are messing up their medications, wouldn't it make sense to have a pharmacist come in and talk to people to try to assist them not to mess up their medications so they don't end up in hospital? That's an example. If you need physio services, you know, you want to talk to local physio services or the local hospital to see whether they could bring physio services to your building to serve five or six different people rather than having people have to make appointments to go out and have those services. All of those are the kinds of things that where you can very specifically ask for things like that. But NORCs do that. NORCs are run by adults themselves, and they try to pull together the resources that adults need to continue to age in place. So trying to get the people who are running federally to understand that that needs support is not, that's a good approach, I think. Helen can probably add something here, and then we'll wind it up because it's 8:30. But Helen, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Well, no, I'm sorry, Trish. I was busy typing
Okay, no worries.
that, so I wasn't.
We were just talking about trying to advance the whole notion of NORCs right now and during the federal election.
Yeah. Well, it's too late now, right? And the federal, I mean, for this election, the federal election is also completely consumed with what's happening in the U.S. It's
Yeah,
impossible to
yeah,
get any other issue on the table at the moment, and so I wouldn't expend my energy at this point trying to influence
yeah.
the
I think we can
Secretary of
let
the.
them know though that it's on the horizon.
Yeah, yeah,
Because Tony
yeah.
Van Bynen, Isabel, I'll just tell you, Tony Van Bynen up in York Region brought a committee together to try to advance Norks at the federal level. He's a Liberal MP. So Tony Van Bynen is a good contact for you especially if you end up with a Liberal MP, because Tony's office may be able to be helpful in speaking to your Liberal MP as well.
How do you spell his last name?
It's Van Bynen, so it's VAN
Yep.
Bynen. So you can Google him
Hmm.
and get his constituency office's number. He won't be there now because he'll be campaigning, but after the election, Tony really was doing a lot to try to advance Norks federally. And there's no reason on earth why the federal government can't fund Norks directly because they funded Age Well at Home. So there's no reason why they can't fund Norks directly.
Yeah,
And we're going to certainly be pushing that agenda with them.
it is the what research human what is it? I can't
Human
remember.
resources.
Yeah,
Yeah,
uh,
Human Resources
is
Canada.
funding the research at Queen's.
Yeah, yeah,
So yeah, no, there is a federal interest,
there
and
is.
if I agree, I hope very much that this MP gets selected, and I think we could use him as a focal point uh,
Yes,
for moving this into other people in the caucus.
yeah, that's exactly right. Okay, I'm going to wind it up because we always end on time. And thank you, everybody. I'm just looking to make sure I've gotten everybody here. Um, okay. Would SSAO be able to organize a collection of SSAO MPP briefings within a defined period using very similar briefing materials? Yes, and essentially, we don't want to give you sort of a, a template. What we're giving you is we're saying this is our position. What we're hoping is that people will take what we are saying is our position. These are all the things we're advocating for, and decide which are the most important for them in their own area, and then just develop your one page of talking points, because you're not going to be convincing on all of the issues that we've outlined. You will be convincing on the issues that mean something to you. So that's why we're doing it that way, Helen, instead of giving everybody a template. Okay, they've got the briefing note that
Yeah,
we put together, but everybody needs to sort of, just tweak that a bit to suit themselves and what they themselves are critically concerned about.
yeah. I guess I was just thinking if we could brief within a specific period of time, it could have much more
Oh,
impact.
I see what you mean. Yeah.
That
Yeah, no, I agree
And it
with you.
would
Like,
have to be when Parliament's in session.
right.
And so they'd be chatting in the hallways. We could develop a much more, if we do it within a constrained time period, we could get more synergy amongst the MPs themselves.
No, I think you're absolutely right about that. That's a good strategy.
Yeah.
So let's say that the briefings that you're planning wait until the legislature resumes,
Yeah.
and after a week that it's been in session, for the 2 weeks after that, see if you can get to your MPPs during that period. So 2 to 3 weeks after the legislature is in session, see if you can get to your MPPs then. I think that that's right, Helen. That would have an impact.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Um, everybody's going to get the slides, Gay, don't worry. And you'll also get the link to the recording for the presentation.
Wonderful.
Okay. All right. Okay, so that's it. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Joe, for chiming in with your experience. That's helpful. And thanks to all of you for being willing to be active because that matters. Believe me, that really, really matters. So the more people we can get to be active, and if you can get other people to join you, that's great. So thank you so much for being willing to take this on. And we want to hear your stories. So email us at seniorsactionontario@gmail.com and let us know how you make out. Okay. Thank you so much and have a good night, everybody.